Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone. So today I want to talk about my journey to Islam. I've been Muslim for a little over 10 months now. It's been amazing. I love being Muslim. And a little background, I grew up Mormon, also known as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and for the most part in Utah in the US. And I was raised religiously, praying every day, reading the scriptures, which included the Bible and the Book of Mormon for the most part, and going to church every Sunday, and youth activities through the week. So it was a big part of my life. And at the same time, my dad encouraged us to be open-minded, and he welcomed any questions that we had, and he encouraged us to think for ourselves. And before I married my husband Jamal, I didn't know much about Islam. I never hung out with any Muslims. There weren't any visible Muslims in the schools that I went to. You know, this was small town Utah, so not a whole lot going on. And I didn't even know that Islam was an Abrahamic religion. I thought it was violent and oppressive for the most part. But that being said, I wasn't put off by Jamal being Muslim. I have always been curious about other cultures and countries, and so I was really curious and I wanted to learn more. And we would have deep conversations about our backgrounds, about religion and God, and it was fascinating. And at this time, I hadn't been going to any church regularly, and I didn't consider myself to be Mormon anymore. Just like loosely Christian, like more of a vibes person, like do good, be good, you'll be fine. But I realized that there were many similarities between Christianity and Islam, and that the stories were similar. And they also had great veneration for Jesus, which surprised me. I remember the first time Jamal told me that Muslims believed in Jesus. I was like, wait, what? I love Jesus. And I also listened to the Quran during this time in English, but it was more to like just get through it, get the gist of it, and say that I did it. So it wasn't in depth, and I wasn't watching or listening to any videos on the explanations of the doctrine. So honestly, I didn't get too much out of it. But I did become more and more curious about Muslim culture, Islam, and especially the aspect of modesty. That really intrigued me, and I would watch a lot of videos of hijabis, and I was fascinated. And the first time that I bought a hijab was to wear for our marriage contract signing. And that was, in an imam's house who is a Muslim leader. And I loved wearing it. And I felt so beautiful and pure and clean. I felt like an angel, and I got emotional. It was really moving, and I didn't want to take it off. I kept it on the rest of the day, and I went out with it on to pick up Jamal from class, and his reaction was priceless. And I started wearing the hijab to work when I worked at Fabletics, whereas before I would wear more revealing clothes, and I felt much more comfortable fully clothed. I felt like it was a barrier between me and bad influences, inappropriate music, vile language, but again, I wasn't wearing it religiously like I do now. And I also fasted for Ramadan with Jamal, mostly fasted. I had some sips of water here and there, not gonna lie. But it was a great experience, though it was very challenging. And then we visited Kuwait last summer, and I wore the hijab a few times at the beginning of our stay, but then I stopped wearing it because I didn't wear it strictly, and everyone else here wears it religiously, so stopped wearing it. But I did experience a level of welcoming and hospitality here that I've never experienced before. And I saw how Muslims live and dress and how kind they are, and it really affected me. And after we visited Kuwait last summer, Jamal got more into his faith, and I felt more peaceful with his increased religiosity. And I wanted to get this area of my life figured out too. And I started listening to Christian worship music, and I just wanted to feel more connected with the divine. I wanted to be firm. And my sister Lizzie and I started going to different churches, trying things out. We went to a Pentecostal one. This was like all in the Salt Lake City area where we lived. And I wasn't really vibing with that one. And we tried out a liberal Christian one where they sang and danced and played guitar and watched movies, had coffee and popcorn. It was a stark difference from my prior church experiences, like growing up Mormon. Totally different, but it was positive and fun. And then one time we invited both of our husbands who are Muslim, and they were into it, like in a joking manner, and it made me realize that it was kind of silly. And all this time in the back of my mind, I was pondering, like, is Jesus God? Is he part of God? Who is God? I was skeptical. And Jamal was learning more about Islam and Christianity as well. And on campus, he would have discussions and long debates with Christians who had booths set up. And he would come home and then tell me what he had learned. And yeah, at this time I was reading the Bible because, again, I wanted to connect more with the divine and to have this area of my life figured out. But I wasn't very into it. Some of the stories were confusing, and there were passages that I would question. I would think, is this literal? Is this not literal? You know, what's going on? And the more that we talked about Jesus and God, the more that I realized I couldn't really explain my beliefs. They didn't really make much sense to me. It was just what I had been taught, and I felt very confused. And I remember one Sunday morning, I was on my bed and I was just crying, like debating, should I go to church? I don't know what to do. I don't know what I believe. I don't know what's true. And Jamal would show me contradictions in the Bible, and yeah, just passages that didn't make sense to me. And then more and more, he shared passages from the Quran, and they were beautiful. And we would listen to tafsir videos together. And I realized that I agreed a lot with the explanations, and it was making more sense to me. And I would turn on Quran recitations, and they would bring me great peace and calm. And I became more and more familiar with Islam, and I started to connect more with it than Christianity. And there would be times where Jamal would pray and I would really want to join him. And so we would pray together. I would follow along his movements. I wouldn't recite anything because I didn't know. But I loved praying the way that Jesus prayed, because in the Bible it says Jesus fell on his face and prayed, paraphrasing here, and basically made sujood. So I thought that was really interesting. And I respected the level of reverence that Jamal and other Muslims had for for the religion in general, the Quran, the prophets, and they took it literally and seriously. And then there was one day where I was at work and I was dealing with these two customers who were so difficult. They were yelling at me for something that I didn't do, and I was trying to stay calm and resolve the situation. And then on the drive home, I turned on Surah Al-Naba, recited by Omar Hisham, and it was so calming. It felt like I was connecting with the divine, and that the sounds penetrated my very heart and soul, and that like there were angels around me, and it was so spiritual. And at this time I felt like my heart was softened. It was all soft and mushy, and the sounds were just coming in and just filling my heart up. And then I got home and I felt like I was ready to become Muslim and take Shahada. And I didn't end up doing it that night, but I told Jamal that I wanted to and that I was ready. And so we planned on doing it a few days later at the mosque. And it was in November, super cold and snowy. So in the evening, we drove to the local mosque, which was about 15 minutes away from our apartment. And it was a small, modest mosque. And I had actually visited this mosque a few months prior, back when I was, really curious about Islam, trying to learn more. And the sheikh answered some of my questions, but I was still really confused. I wasn't convinced. And on the drive home, I told Jamal, I don't think I'll ever become Muslim. And then months later, there I was, taking Shahada in the same mosque. SubhanAllah. Never say never. And I went up to the front with Jamal, and they had a mic and everything. And the Imam introduced me and told the people that I would be taking Shahada. And he was very friendly, and I repeated the words after him. So, Ashadu, first in Arabic and then in English. And it was such an incredible feeling. It was so joyous. And at the end, he said takbir, and everyone was like, Allahu Akbar. It was so wonderful. I felt fully supported and totally welcomed into Islam. And he explained that when you take Shahada, all of your previous sins are forgiven and you have a clean slate like a baby. And I got emotional. I teared up just knowing that all my sins were forgiven and that I was, in a sense, starting over. And I definitely felt reborn, cleansed and holy, like a new, improved person. And it was very special, one of the most special days of my life. And it was a wonderful experience. So that is the gist of it. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.